Hello, everybody, and welcome to our LinkedIn Live session, which is also recorded as a podcast episode. And thank you, everyone, joining us live, and to those watching or listening to the recording. So, whether you are here in real time or catching up later, let's take the maximum value out of this discussion here today on building meaningful discussions in an overwhelmed age and rebuilding trust. So I'd like to begin with a fill in the blank challenge to our listeners. Please take a moment to complete a sentence by commenting a word or a phrase. And the sentence is: the best way to build trust in business is. What is it? What word or phrase best fits here? And if you're listening to the recording, we would still love your thoughts as we keep discussions ongoing inside the Powerful Marketers community. So I don't have the perfect answer, but we hope to fill this in with insights from our guests by the end of the session here today. Frank and Terry, thank you for being here today. How are you?
Doing well.
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. I have an answer.
You have. Go ahead.
DWYSYWD.
Okay, and it is when you put it all together. Help me out.
Do what you said you would do. It's straightforward, it's simple, and it's a great reminder that if you really want to separate yourself and elevate, all you have to do is keep your darn word. It's amazing how many people say they're going to do something and then don't do it. So that's a simple way to build trust. And I learned that back when I lived in Columbus near Frank Agin.
I love that. I love that. And hopefully, we will hear some thoughts from our listeners as well. But before we go back to that, let's start with brief introductions because maybe everybody don't know us. So, Frank, let's begin with you.
Can you hear me? Am I still here now?
Yes,
All right. Well,
that's good news.
for those watching, we were having technical difficulties beforehand, and I got blamed for everything. Yeah. Well, thanks for having Mari-Liis. Thanks for having us. My name's Frank Agin. I'm in Columbus, Ohio. Terry and I have known each other a long time. We don't put years to that anymore. It's been a long time. I used to be an attorney, and I was struggling to get business, and somebody pointed me in the direction of networking as a way of getting referrals. And I fell in love with it, and it's just, it's the one thing about the law is that it always changes, but this networking thing, this relationship thing, it doesn't change. It's not going to change in our lifetime. It hasn't changed in really the last 10,000 years and won't change in the next 10,000 years. And so it's truly something you can lean into and really learn and help people with. So I run an organization that helps people get more referrals through networking and do a lot of writing and speaking on those topics.
That's good. And just like Terry said, be a normal person. Just do what you promised.
Yeah.
Thank you, Frank. And over to you, Terry.
My name's Terry Bean. I'm in just outside of the Detroit area. I've been here for 25 years, not dating how long I've known Frank Agin, though, that's for sure. I started a large group here in the Detroit area called Motor City Connect to build better relationships, help entrepreneurs grow themselves, grow their business, and then better our community. And that led to speaking professionally, which led to coaching leaders and helping them grow. And I'm playing around with the idea of 365-degree coaching, right? So I know we have 360 degrees in a perfect circle. I have that extra 5 degrees, not only because I like to be a little bit extra, but because we need to bring our whole selves every single day. So that thought just occurred to me this morning. So I'm floating the trial balloon on 365-degree coaching right now. You heard it first. It's breaking news. Very exciting.
Love it. Thank you. And we are getting live coaching today from you, so I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
So I am Mari-Liis, founder of Powerful Marketers, community leader, and podcast host with 20 plus years in marketing, 15 plus years as a business owner, and I'm always learning how to work smarter, not harder. And I met Frank and Terry through networking, and I believe that we have built an incredible professional relationship over the years here. And here's a fun fact: we have never met in person. And yet, I feel like I know, like, and trust you more than people I interact with face to face. And I'm just being honest here. So, where I want to go with that is that this highlights the power of online relationships, but it also represents these challenges because while digital connections create opportunities, they also oftentimes lead to superficial and overwhelming interactions. So, Frank, I know you have been networking for decades, right? And have seen its, let's say, evolution even. What has really changed and what has remained the same?
Well, when it comes to building relationships and building trust, really nothing has changed. All technology allows us to do is to do it farther and faster. You know, I mean, Terry and I knew each other. I know it was pre-email because I remember Terry stopping at my office and not yelling at me, but saying, "Frank, you really need to get on board with this email thing." My crappy little office Terry came into, and I really leaned into it at that point. But up till then, it was like if you wanted to have a conversation, you had lunch with somebody, you picked up the phone, and if you went to lunch, you came back, you had a bunch of voicemail. But trust is really, really the same, and it's been the same since the beginning of time. And people push back on that. I always ask people, you know, where do babies come from? They come from the same place they've come from. And I don't mean to be, I'm not trying to be dirty or anything like that, but it's like, you know, our personal relationships and how we fall in love. I mean, that's trust. That's a huge component of trust. But there's really no difference between our brains that build trust in a personal relationship and in a business relationship. And so it's all very hardwired, and it really hasn't changed. It's just people like to think that they can game it because they have LinkedIn or they have whatever. But we all have a relationship. We all trust each other because of, you know, just things that what Terry said, do what you say you're going to do. Laura's got a comment up there as well. Yeah, but it's really kind of a feeling. And it's something in our brains that gets triggered. So, yeah.
We all get that, but still it's kind of vague, let's be honest. So maybe it's better to discuss what are the, let's say, pitfalls that people face. Terry, maybe you want to comment here because your work focuses on connectedness, right?
I think the biggest pitfall people take or face is the idea that when online, most of our interaction is through the written word. And we can blow trust in a heartbeat because we read things into written word like tone that the author may have never intended. So we get bent out of shape or angry or frustrated by something because we put an emphasis on a word that had no bearing in that sentence to the author. So that's a real challenge. And without proper feedback loops, without asking questions, without trying to dig into what somebody meant, we can get ourselves in trouble. And that's on us as the reader. And the author, oftentimes we're in such a hurry to put this piece of content out, to write it, that we don't really check and make sure that what we said is what we absolutely intended to say. So those things are challenging. And that's why I think video is such an authentic way for us to communicate. And one of the reasons that, Mari-Liis, we've built trust with you is we've spent time talking and seeing each other, where we can read all the body language cue, well, most of the body language cues, hear the tone in what you're saying, and really derive a lot more meaning from that conversation than if we were just writing emails or commenting on posts back and forth.
It's Terry, it's funny you say that, because I just had an email exchange this morning with our good mutual friend Gina, and she you have to know our friend Gina. She's a wonderful human being, but I said something and it set her off. She read something into what I said, and there's just, and there was no reeling it in, right? Other than we got to get on the phone and talk. So what you said is just, that was a perfect example. I almost broke out laughing when you said that, because it's so true.
Yeah, it's very good. I agree 100% with you. And coming back to what Frank, you said earlier, that this building relationship is such a normal thing actually for us. And when I'm thinking about building relationships, I think it's like breathing air, because we do it every day. We do that daily, at work, online, and in our personal lives, etc. But have you ever considered how intentional breathing techniques, can energize you or calm or even heal you? And I believe that connections or building relationships can work same way. I mean, most people work or network on autopilot, right? So you mentioned they collect those LinkedIn connections without engaging. We exchange business cards, that we never maybe even revisit, or we just assume that a connection equals a relationship. But in reality, meaningful connections require conscious effort and purpose, right?
Yeah. No, they do.
So I went through. Yeah, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. I don't want to interrupt you. This is your show.
No. I just wanted to bring in some data to confirm that. And here's what I learned: that 72% of people feel more disconnected than ever, despite the digital age providing more ways to stay in touch. So where's the pitfall there? One thing is that we are just writing things, but not everybody, we don't have a chance with everybody to get even on a video.
Yeah, I'm always a little leery of those studies, because the questions are almost leading, or I don't even know how the questions are answered, or how the questions are asked. And I'm not disputing it, but I think part of it is it's kind of like a kid in a candy store. You go to candy and there's just candy everywhere, and you can't make a decision. And that's what social media is. There's so many people to communicate with. I'm not going to lean into this one person because I've got these other people here. And, an eagle that tries to catch two rabbits catches none, right? And we're just all so distracted because there's so much candy out there. And I think that's part of the problem in the analog age, where you had to pick up the phone or meet somebody in person. Even going way back, it was like you didn't have as much candy. Continuing that metaphor, it's like, okay, the person in the meeting here is, it's Terry and Gina and two others. Now you get on LinkedIn and it's like, okay, where do I stop? And I feel I have to touch everybody.
It's like shopping in the toothpaste aisle. It's interesting. Before Frank started speaking, you were talking about just connecting, and that not being like setting up a relationship. And it reminded me of something a gentleman used to have on his LinkedIn profile. So I wanted to confirm the guy's name. So I hopped over to LinkedIn, typed it in. And as I was scrolling down Andy Lepeda's profile, who used to always say, connecting is not enough, one of the first things I see in his featured profiles is a conversation he had with Frank Agin. and Andy's out of like Birmingham, England. So I was like, wait a second, I'm bringing somebody in that I think might be new to the conversation, and good old Frank's already there.
Yeah. Well, but I mean, you know, Terry's 3 hours away from where I'm at. You know, you're a world away, Mari-Liis. But you know, I think we all have the same, you know, our kids drive us crazy, right? We have issues with our spouses. I don't mean big issues, but you know, just little things, you know, and I've just, that was the wonderful thing about the lockdown and getting on Zoom and meeting all sorts of people, is you start to realize that we're all just human. We all have that same hardwiring, you know. Okay, little things in cultures are different, and you know, America's Independence Day is July 4th. In Estonia, it's February 28th, which is Mari-Liis's birthday, just FYI.
24th. Very good.
Yeah, I want to throw that in there. 24th. Is it 24th?
Yes.
Okay.
But you knew that back then.
Anyhow, but you know, we're all the same, you know, and we're all trying to, you know, care for a family or care for ourselves. And I think those are some of the things that get in the way, because there's an element of greed there, you know. Everybody wants a little bit more, and some people can't get out of their own way. I don't know.
I agree with you. We are the same, but there are also things that are not the same for all of us. I mean, for example, when we talk about different personality types and how people perceive information and communication. So there are probably some, let's say, techniques we can learn more about. And I know that, Terry, you know very much about, you know, different personality types. We have had these discussions. And I know, Frank, you're also familiar with that. And before diving to that, I'd like to remind for the listeners to take a moment to complete this sentence in the comments. So the best way to build trust in business is, what word or phrase best fits? We see that Jungna have commented that just deliver what you promise. Yeah, of course. that is something we all respect, and thank you for that. And Laura's comment is slightly longer, but I love how she started. Be a reasonable human being. So again, it is very good, and of course we should always deliver what we promise, and we always should be reasonable human beings. But let's start from the beginning again. Let's say I am this kind of, you know, overwhelmed professional who has a bunch of LinkedIn connections, but it doesn't equal relationships. And I love the comparison with the candy store, because that describes very well how we all feel, right? So many connections, so many things to do. So how should somebody who is listening to us right now start building real relationships with these connections they have? So, Frank.
Well, Michael Foreman just threw something in the comments. He's in Atlanta, Georgia. He's another networking guy. If you don't know him, Terry, you should reach out to him. Well, you too, Mari-Liis. But you know, active listening. I think people want to be heard. You know, you know, the most important thing we've ever done as humans, or the most dangerous thing we do as humans, is trusting people. And you know, back in the day, way back when we were nomadic, I mean, you needed to trust the 4 or 5 people you were out on patrol with, or on a hunt or whatever. You just needed to know that, you know, and it was life or death. When you chose a mate long time ago, it was life or death. You needed to know that person was coming back, or that person would be there when you were coming back. You needed to know those things. And the people who made bad decisions with respect to those things, generally speaking, their gene pool died out. And so it was a really important thing. And so when you talk about active listening and just sitting and understanding, okay, what does this person need? and not to assume it. Terry kind of touched on that. Sometimes we say things and assume that people understand the context of what we're saying. And, there are probably words and phrases in Estonia that, or that we say in the United States that would be horribly offensive in other countries. I know that for a fact. Certainly with respect to, I'm not going to bring it up. I've had these conversations with people and they're hilarious, but for us, they're just everyday words. For other people, it's like this totally offensive thing, and that's just an extreme example, but there can be little things where, it creates a little bit of a misunderstanding, and that's a little bit of trust. And then someone's not trusting you and you get that sense, and then all of a sudden you're less trusting of them, and it becomes a downward spiral.
Mm-hmm. That's very good, and thank you, JD, for a comment that he confirms that he's actively listening to this conversation. So thank you so much, JD. Greetings to you, and thank you, Michael, actually listening, and it's very good point. And I love the saying that we have 2 ears and 1 mouth with a reason. So let's use them in the right proportion, right? So your thoughts here, Terry?
I'm a trust first kind of guy. I'm the guy that's going to give you enough rope to hang yourself, and once you disearn that trust, you're going to have a much harder time getting it back. It's funny that you mentioned personality tests. I just took a pseudo Myers-Briggs yesterday, and for the first time since I had a child, I flipped from ENFP, extroverted, intuitive, feeling, perceiving, to an and I should say back to an ENTP, extroverted, intuitive, thinking, perceiving. And when you look at the perceiving, it's on the same line as judging, right? So are you open and listening and taking in information and trying to give everybody the benefit of the doubt? Or are you judging every word that comes out of their face? Those are kind of the opposite ends, where you're critical and already deciding what they mean without actively listening and taking that information in. On my score yesterday, my P was 100%. My J was 0. And I thought it was high the last time when it was 93-7. And I think it's really important to allow people to be themselves, to make mistakes. And it's our job as networkers, as who are connecting, as relationship builders, as sales professionals, as business leaders, to go out of our way to meet people where they are. I'm not saying you lose yourself, but you try to be more adaptable, more chameleon-like, to understand who you're talking to. And I think that's a good way to go about building relationships. Again, not changing your spots, but allowing them to have theirs.
I love what you started with there, Terry. You're a trust first type of person, because I think to get someone's trust, you've got to give it first. I mean, when I talk to people, I'll use the example or the role play of, if I came up to you and said, I don't trust you, right away, your instinct is to be like, ugh, I don't trust you either, But if you step into it, and this gets before the whole reliability and do what you say you're going to do. But if you come into somebody, as Terry does, and says, hey, I'm very interested in learning about you, and tell me about you, and how can I help you? Which is all, in my mind, signals of trust. How can I help you is basically telling somebody, I care about you. And if there's something I can do, I'm not going to give you a winning lottery ticket or take you under, feed you for the rest of your life kind of a thing. But if there's some small way I can care for you, that's a signal of trust. And when you start to do that, that's when you start to earn it back. And again, it may not be in a big way, but I think that's the genesis of how we build trust with one another.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same way, right? It's the same way to build a good networking relationship. You want to add value to them, right? It's like that relationship capital bank account. We have to make some deposits before we can make some withdrawals.
Yeah.
So it's a very similar thing. And I appreciate that. I want to zip back to the candy store analogy, though, because you asked a question, Mari-Liis, about how do you sort through the gazillion LinkedIn or Facebook or Instagram connections to figure out who's worthy of building that relationship with. Well, much like going to a networking event and knowing the type of person you're expecting to meet, if you walk into a candy shop and say, I want a candy bar that has almonds in it, you significantly limit the choices. There's not as many distractions. Much like going to a networking event, I want to meet the type of people that execute X, Y, or Z. Now you focus, right, comes down and it's a much smaller pool. So I'm not saying that we eliminate all the random options or other people, but if we're doing the outreach and if we're initiating things, we need to understand who that type of person is that we're going after. And that allows for better focus, better time use, and better connections.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a very good advice to focus down. What is it that you're exactly looking for? That's very good. And coming to the point that you just gave, Frank, it's giver's gain, right? So
Yeah.
we always we should, when you expect something, you should first be ready to give yourself, be honest, be trustworthy, and so on. But I loved how you said that perceiving is often considered as judging. I've never thought of that.
Can be, right? I mean, we have a tendency, and it shows up more online than in face to face, but we have a tendency to be overly critical of things, right?
Mm-hmm.
Hey, how many times have you gone to a post and said, don't read the comments on that because you know it's going to go sideways and negative in an instant?
Mm-hmm.
Because we're all like, well, I don't know about all of us, but there are a lot of keyboard warriors that are exceedingly brave when there's no one standing right in front of them. We say things online that we would never say to a person if they could slap us upside the head if we did. We just
Mm-hmm.
don't. So it's fascinating to me how we get that extra shot of like courage when we're typing as opposed to speaking.
Mm-hmm. That's very good. And I'd like to still come back to addressing some pitfalls because I believe there are a lot of them. And before that, again, a reminder for the people who have joined, please take a moment to complete the sentence in the comments. The best way to build trust in business is what word or phrase best fits. And thank you, Kevin, for the word honesty. And Kaida also mentioned that she thinks that it's genuine interest in the other party and passion for the topic. That's also good. So maybe this is something how to narrow down, with whom we should actually start building relationships. So maybe we find some common passion or common topics we want to talk about. Your comments here, Frank.
Well, it's I don't disagree with that, but you never know, right? You never know until you start talking to somebody, and um, yeah. If I go to the candy store, I'm going to get a candy bar with almonds, and that's pretty clear in my mind. But but people are different because you just don't know who knows who, and so I strike up conversations pretty much with anybody. It's a wonder I have never been abducted as a child because I've just always been very chatty with people, and you find out things about certain individuals. I was in my hometown over the weekend, and just talking to the person who was working the hotel desk, and found out that his parents had Alzheimer's, and all of a sudden it just kind of changes the conversation. I don't know this person. I don't know the person's name. But he was, I'm an early riser. He worked the overnight shift, so I'm up working out every day. I saw him early every morning. And when I was leaving to check out that last day, he just made a comment. He just said, "Hey, keep working out or something like that. And I'm like, oh, we had a relationship. Now, so I guess there's just different levels of relationships. We have people in our lives, we've got our wives and our kids and close family people. And then you have other people. I don't know. I build relationships with lots of people, and then some become better relationships, and others just kind of linger out there, if you will. If I go back to that particular hotel, um, I might run into that person.
But why is it so that with some, you actually build those relationships, but not with others?
Well, it does come down to interest, right?
Mhm.
Lots of things, whatever. Yeah, interest, because you want to feel like you. And there are studies out there that we want to associate with people who we have things in common with, right? Whether
Mhm.
it's the same team, politics, religion, cooking, whatever it is, kids. Those are all sorts of things that we start to build our little tribes around these sorts of commonalities. Um, and that's where you can have an interesting conversation with something. It's always, it's nice to show interest in what somebody's saying, but long term, if it's not something that interests you, you're not going to want to keep going back to having that conversation about needlepoint. Like, okay, that's neat
Mhm.
that you do that. I'm on to talk to somebody else about sports. So, I don't know.
Yeah, that's good. And looking at Crystal's and Selvita's comments right now, I believe there there also should be alignment in values that we have. So we talk about honesty and to deliver on what you promise, and there is also comment that the same way to achieve the goal, and the ways that we work are often related to our values, how we see things and how we do things. So thank you, Terry. Your thoughts here?
What I have found over the 30 years of doing this is generally we like people that we perceive are like us. And so when you talk about values, when you talk about beliefs, when you talk about goals, when you talk about TV, sports, religion, politics, family, things that you enjoy doing, hobbies, books you've read, whatever the case, if someone's got that same level of passion for any one of those things, you're going to like them more than someone who's on the opposite end of the spectrum. Because, hey, this person's a good person. They like the same things I do. And I'm not saying that you can't learn from or gain understanding or find value in people who are 180 degrees around from you, because you can. That's where growth actually happens. When we get outside of our echo chamber, we can learn things and see things differently and change our perspective. But that starting point, and I agree with Frank about talking to everybody, because my very simple rule is you don't know who anyone knows until you get to know a little bit about them, right? So they may be like nothing that seems to fit your world, but their brother or sister or parent or best friend could be your ideal client, and you don't really get to find that out. So I'm a huge fan of allowing for serendipity at networking events, but I'm also a huge fan of allowing for, if I'm going to spend the time and invest the energy, I want to know what that chocolate bar with almonds might be, as opposed to I'm looking for candy,
Yeah,
because everything's candy at that point. And
yeah,
we can't sort through all of it. We just can't.
yeah. I think the value in uh, as Ruby puts it, commonality, is that if we're talking with somebody who we have things in common with, there's the potential that they have value that we don't have, and there's the potential that we have value they don't have. If I'm talking to somebody about needlepoint or just something, dance, something I'm not interested in or have never participated in, chances are I don't have people in my network that I can benefit them, or vice versa. But if we're having a conversation with somebody and they're really Well, they're a podcaster. Oh, wow. I'm interested because you might have guests that I don't have, and I might have guests that you haven't had. You might have a way of doing this or promoting your show that I could learn from, or I might be able to teach you. And I think that's what, that's what helps create the value, or create the trust, create the interest in one another. Because, it's, in my mind, it's all very, very basic. At the end of the day, we're all just trying to survive. We're all just trying to care for a family. And so we need to be doing things that promote that. And I don't mean that in a greedy sense, but you can't spend your whole day having conversations with people where there's no alignment at all, because then you totally waste the day. It's good to kind of feel people out, say, okay, yeah, you know what, they're into whatever, I'm not into that. But we do need to make determinations at some point.
Mm-hmm.
People, drop in the comments whether or not you believe Frank secretly does needlepoint. I think he might be a needlepoint guy. Now, I didn't think that until today.
Yeah, well, your Christmas gift is underway.
Yeah, that's very good. And thank you, Ruby, for the commonality comment here, and greetings to Scotland, because I know that Ruby is in Scotland, so we are worldwide. Love that. But I'd like this to be, as practical as possible for the listeners as well. What are the tips or tricks that we can share besides, that you have 2 ears and 1 mouth? Use them. So I think that what it means when you use them in the right proportion means that we should also pay attention to what people say, not just, hear them, right? So Frank, you mentioned earlier that, my birthday, thank you for that. And it means a lot. So it's a small thing that you can do in a networking or, in this situation where you just actually pay attention and you pull them out in a nice way, just like Frank did. So I think that was a great example. Any other, tricks or tips you use, or maybe you do that automatically and you don't even think?
I don't know that
I know you don't do, because it's normal for you, but most people don't do that.
Well, you can't see the water you're swimming in, right? I mean, how Terry conducts himself, and I'm no great secret, I'm a big fan of Terry. How he conducts himself is very unique, but I would imagine Terry has moments where it's like, oh, why am I not hitting on, how can I be better? How can I be better? And people on the outside are saying, man, he's perfect.
That has never once happened ever in a million years.
What's that? That you said you're perfect?
Yeah, that's not. Yeah,
no,
but thank you. I love that.
No, I'm not saying you think that, but I'm thinking other people looking on. We all have our own doubts, but I just try to be interested in people and be interested in what people have to say. Going back to, we're stuck on candy. I don't needlepoint. I love candy. To my fault, I love candy. But I tell people all the time, I hate coconut. I absolutely hate coconut. I've got a gag reflex to coconut. But if you hand me an Almond Joy bar, which I don't know if they have them in Estonia, but in the United States, the Almond Joy bar is like a little bit of chocolate and all coconut. But if you hand me an Almond Joy bar, I will take it. And the reason I'll take it is because I know there's somebody in my life who loves coconut, and I'm taking it for them. And I look, in hopes that they'll think the same way for me about the candies I like. So I use that as a metaphor to explain that when I talk to people and listen, I'm listening for opportunities. Most people listen for opportunities for themselves. I just try to listen for opportunity. Oh, you're writing a book. That is so cool. And I'm thinking, okay, who are the people I know that can help this person? Or maybe this person's book can help somebody else. And I kind of catalog all that stuff. And most of the time, nothing happens in the moment. But I might be talking to somebody 3 weeks later saying, you know what, I'm looking to do voiceover work for somebody writing a book. Oh, I know somebody. And so that's just, trying to keep other people top of mind.
Hmm. I think that's very good. That's very good. Terry, any tips?
I want, yeah, I've got two or three things to add to this, but I love what Michael said about when building rapport, remember form,
Mm.
family, occupation, recreation, and a message. And I had to lean in because I thought it said massage because I think that would be a good way to build relationships too, but maybe a little too touchy feely. So I wanted to make sure I quoted that properly. Um, Listen, I tell people to this day the things I know about building relationships and networking with people, I learned from observing Frank. I watched how he interacted, saw how people responded to him. He's funny, he's caring, he's whip smart, and he's a joy to be around because he's always finding ways to add value to others. And I remember sending him an email asking for help for a friend of mine. And his response was, "It is always a pleasure to be of service to other people." And that's not tripe, he genuinely means it. So, two of my tips are one, practice after you networking. After you networking is this idea that let your conversation partner go first. So many good things happen. One, you're not worried about whether or not you're going to remember their name. We don't have memory issues. We have attention issues. We're so busy focusing on what we're going to say to sound engaging or interesting or fascinating or funny or whatever we're trying to be that we're not paying attention when they're speaking to us. Get rid of all of that. Let them talk. Be a really, really good listener, as we've mentioned 3 or 4 times, and then ask questions to continue the conversation. Everybody's favorite topic is the same, it's themselves. I can have a conversation with you for 10 minutes. I can speak for 90 seconds. You're going to walk away thinking I'm the best conversationalist ever because we're talking about your favorite topic. You'll learn this much about me, but I'll learn a ton about you. And in that moment, I'm going to know whether or not we're going to continue this conversation and build on this relationship or not. And I don't mean to sound like a control freak, but after building relationships with literally thousands upon thousands of people, you start to be a little bit guarded of your time, where you put your energy, right? Where you put extra energy, all of its energy, all of its time. But who are you going to invest more of those things into? And that's kind of how I've come to do it.
So many good things here. We have an attention issue, not memory issue. I love that because I was worried about my memory.
Yeah, no, I think that's totally it. It's whenever I've forgotten somebody's name, when I dissect what happened, it's because I'm trying to think about what I'm going to be saying, as opposed to if I'm just leaned in and okay, is it Richard or Rick? Or just really focused in, giving them attention. I love it.
Yeah, that's very good stuff. And Linda is also confirming in the comments that Terry is one of the best listeners. I agree with that 100%. And that was a great takeaway. Let your conversation partner go first. That's a very practical thing. I love that. And coming back to that, we are overwhelmed and we have a lot of connections, but we don't build real relationships. So what could be this practical takeaway? Let's say, I don't know, take one connection each day and start building connections or relationship with them. Or, because, we only have like 24 hours every day. So we should use them wisely and probably, or this is what I have seen, that most people end up or they don't invest time into building relationships because they think it takes too much of their time.
Yeah. I guess my takeaway is that just the simple phrase, less is more. when I would, even to this day, but certainly during the pandemic, I would talk to people like, oh yeah, gotta go. I got 10 more calls today. It's like, are you kidding me? I mean, I have, and maybe it's an attention thing, but if I have 3 calls, I can't keep things straight. But they're like, yeah, that's every day. I'm just going. And my feeling is less is more. Have less calls, and go deeper on that. Rather than from Zoom to Zoom or networking event to networking event, go to an event, meet 4 or 5 people. That's plenty at an event. Follow up, write little notes to people, look them up on LinkedIn. I'm not saying reach out to them and pitch them, but just find things out, devote some time to that. When I have a call with somebody, it's generally a 45-minute thing, maybe an hour. Not the call itself, but just I'm talking to somebody. Okay, you know what? Here are 3 people I want to connect them to, or 3 things I can follow up and do something for them. And before anything else happens, I'm going to try and get those things done. Otherwise, you start to forget, things start to get all merged together. So less is more. Just, don't try to meet as many people. Go deep with fewer people.
I love that. That's a very good takeaway. What's that for you, Terry? I know you already started with that, but maybe you want to.
I've had a stated goal for the past 15 or 16 years of helping at least 3 people a day, right? And what help looks like for me is maybe it's a check-in text or a phone call just to see how they're doing. Maybe it's thinking about them front and center for 2 minutes, seeing what emerges as to who I could introduce them to or connect them with, or an article or a piece of information that I'm aware of that will add value to their life. And I go back to that construct of add value. How can you support? And value doesn't have to always be like, here's a big piece of business, right? It could just be an idea that might help them get further along, right? And those things really matter. So, but I feel like what Frank was saying lines up with the word intentionality. And I think we have to be much more intentional in our connecting, in our outreach, in our efforts that we're making. And it's okay to not serve all people every single day. I'll get to you. I will. And if you want to get to me, I'm like hidden in plain sight, right? Just ask. You've been cordially invited numerous times. I am happy to be of service, much like Frank. And you, Mari-Liis.
Thank you. I love that. Be in service of others, and that's very practical again, just to help 3 people a day. Very good advice also, and don't meet more than 3 people a day. As Frank just shared, that there are people who are just constantly going from meeting to meeting and going crazy and just connecting with people, but not actually building any relationships, right? So for me, it's always also that you should very slowly and invest time, because just as healing or breathing take time, relationships cannot be forced. They need time to develop, naturally. And of course, if you are in service of others and you actually pay attention and you are being just a normal human being, then it's kind of it happens. You don't need to force it, right?
Can't force it, really.
Yeah. No, that's a great point. Everybody thinks that I'm different, I'm special. I will unravel 100,000 years of human development, and I'm just going to get trust because because I talk loud and I'm gregarious. It's no, it doesn't work that way.
Yeah, I love that. So it all comes, back to the I don't know. We all come back to the roots, or where we come from, as you said, that it has been like that for thousands of years. So just very slowly step back and take some time to build relationships. But since we only have 10 more minutes left, On a different note, maybe a personal question, if you don't mind. I know you're not prepared. So, what do you do when you need this extra boost or when you feel mentally exhausted? Maybe you listen to music. If so, what kind of music? Or do you go for a walk? Or do you like to meditate or watch movies? Or what is it for you, Terry?
This is gonna sound like potentially untrue, but I have no idea. I don't know that I've ever felt mentally exhausted. I don't like I joke about it all the time. I could go speak for 2 hours over here, drive for 2 hours, go speak for 2 hours, drive for an hour and go speak for 2 hours. I've got energy for days. And when I don't, I sleep, right? Like
That's good.
my wife and I go to bed at very different times, but we wake up at very similar times. And so I'll go downstairs and hang out and do some work or watch TV or do whatever the heck I'm doing. And, I'm like, man, I really got to stop going to bed at 1 or 2. But it's because I know that when my head hits the pillow, I want that head to be asleep within 5 minutes. And if I don't feel like that's going to happen, it's no sense in going to bed. And there's once every 2 weeks, I'll go to bed at 9:30 because I know I'm going to be asleep in 5 minutes. It's just,
I,
I'm like that. But
no, that's
music,
very good.
working out, all good stuff.
Yeah, but sleeping is my favorite as well. So thank you for bringing that up. Very good answer from Terry. So Frank, what's for you?
When I'm overwhelmed and exhausted, I think there's a lot of things. I will go for a walk. I do, Terry, you mentioned driving from one event to another. I think being in the car can be that alone time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting. There are studies out there that they've looked at people's brains, and what they've determined that when we sleep or when we have the quiet moments, our brain is actively sorting out all the contacts we have. It's actively going through and giving us talking points or helping us work through how we're going to approach things. So I think that alone time, that downtime is really important. I'll go to the movies. It's a way. Workout is another thing. I am very active. I'm very busy. I don't. I love what I do, so I don't. But I still get tired, and
Mm-hmm.
those are the things I'll do to just kind of recharge. And sometimes it's just a 20-minute cat nap. I had somebody produce. It's a basically she hypnotizes me, right? I mean, it's just a little tape. It's 20 minutes, and
Mm-hmm.
it puts me out. It's 17 minutes long. It puts me out. And I set a timer. It's 20 minutes to go off. And within 5 minutes, I'm under. And 20 minutes, my alarm goes off. And it just feels like I have been asleep for hours. So
Mm-hmm.
it's like rebooting a computer. It's just amazing. So
Drop a comment if you would like a copy of that. Yes, please. Thank you very much.
well, shout out to Karen Ross, a woman in Chicago. She did it for me. And it's amazing. It's amazing. So
That was awesome. That sounds
That's
awesome.
that's great. And yeah, for me, it's also sleeping, and I also love to watch movies, and I love to dance as well. So yeah, but thank you so much, Frank and Terry, for joining this LinkedIn Live today. Before we wrap up this discussion, for our listeners, please tell them where they can connect with you, probably on LinkedIn, but maybe you have something something else to tell them. Mm,
well, I'm getting notifications. Some people have already connected with me, so thank you. Yeah, LinkedIn's a convenient way to find me.
mhm.
If LinkedIn's not your thing, I have a website. It's just Agin, all one word.com. You go there, and my email is there. You can find my LinkedIn. You can find my Facebook. But um, yeah, any of those places. I'm a big email person. I just keep track of that and respond to those. So
Yeah, thank you. And we will put those links next to this episode on podcast platforms as well. Thank you. And Terry.
I try to hide myself in plain sight. So wherever you find yourself, you'll find me. I'm either Terry Bean or Try Bean without the first E and R. So Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, of course, or trybean.com is the actual website that probably has links to all those places. So yeah, my mantra this year is moving from hidden in plain sight to stepping into the spotlight. So, Mari-Liis, thank you for allowing me to join you in this conversation. I think it was value add, and I appreciate that. So, yeah, good stuff.
yeah, likewise. Yeah, it's always it's great to have gotten to know you over the last few years, and I feel big time, right? I know people in Europe. Terry was kind of my step. I know somebody in Detroit. I know the guy in Detroit. Now I know the person in Europe too. So.
Yeah. Thank you so much, guys. And I also have one thing I wanted to share, because we have something exciting this year coming up. We are launching a book, and it's called The Greatest Marketer of the World. So go ahead, check out the thegreatestmarketer.com page if you want to get a sneak peek and be part of the launch team. And I also hope to connect and build relationships over LinkedIn, of course. So Terry and Frank, it's an honor to have you here. And I'm really happy that you are so supportive both. And I can see that that you are with a servant heart, both of you. So thank you so much.
Thanks.
So thank you, listeners. And let's turn today's overwhelm into tomorrow's trust, right? Thank you for joining us. And until next time.